Okay, everyone. So I will start talking about jQuery. It's a brief introduction, what it is, and what can we do it. Our agenda, it's here. So I'm going to talk about what is jQuery, advantage of using it, examples, some best practices, some plugins, and when you should not use it. So Here, this is an overview from Stack Overflow from 2022 of the most used technologies and framework for that year. It was asked for more than 60,000 people. And you can see here that jQuery is still one of the top three most popular framework or plugins, libraries, as you can call anything here, just because they are talking about all of that. Um, but of course, we do have many other things. And if we are talking about JavaScript frameworks, yes, we know that there are many others. And usually every 6 months, something new will come up. Angular, React, Vue, Ember, there's Backbone as well. So there are many frameworks that makes our life easier. But I will talk today about jQuery. And that the reason for that is because what is exactly jQuery? jQuery is it's a library. It's not even considered a framework. It's just a library to support us to make simpler code for JavaScript. So it's a syntax sugar, let's say like this, that you don't need to use JavaScript purely, but you can make things easier. So that's what is jQuery. It simplifies, as I mentioned, all the process about the HTML, the DOM manipulation, event handling, animation, Ajax interactions. So it's make very easier and simpler to learn, and it's also something that you don't need to know much in order to understand to start to do your first script. So that's one of the good reasons of jQuery. And here the advantages is more like it has a cross-browser compatibility. It works very easier on all the browsers that we have, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari, and others. As I mentioned already, simplification, the DOM manipulation is an advantage, and it has this extensibility of a plugin. So you can use pure jQuery and use other plugins to do gallery, to do other fancy things that you don't want to do yourself. And also one of the best things I think about jQuery that I found in all the times that I work is the community. There is a very big community and a good documentation. Anytime you have a question or you want to find an examples, you will find there. So coming back down to a real life example, here is what we would do in a JavaScript if we want to change a color. So you basically take the document, element by ID, style, color. But with jQuery, you just take the ID of the element and CSS color. It's very easier. Of course, it's one line, but it makes things simpler to you. And the case of an event handler is also a very simple way to do it, and as an equivalent of what is a pure JavaScript and what we are using with jQuery, just calling like that, and that's done. And in the scope, you do all that you needed. Another example is about Ajax. So of course, when you're doing pure JavaScript, it can get a bit ugly. But then with jQuery, you can just simply use this, and it's easier to understand and to follow what's going on. So you just put a URL of your REST API, then you say the method, and then when there is a success or failure, you have the action, you do that without reload the page, without do anything like that. For animation, yes, that's also very fancy. There are many options and events that we can check in that case, is just to slowly fade in and fade out, just adding the time, and it will do exactly the same things as you would do in the JavaScript. So for examples, when you look in the jQuery page, this one. Are you seeing my screen, right? The jQuery page. Okay, good. Just because I changed tabs. So when you go here in the API documentation, of course, you can see how many options for events or for core changes. So all of that, you can see how to do it and some examples. So in more details, all of that, if you want to interact with a CSS, how to add class, how to remove a class, and all the examples you can try, many class, one class. So it's very simple to do that, and with some examples you can see here. Just to get started, what you needed is just add into your page the JavaScript that the library that you want to do. In that case, here is using the version 3.7.0. You can find all the versions here in the download section. And this is the latest one. Can also add using other dependency managers, but just the simple and easier way is just import the file, usually minimize it in your code, and then that's it. Nothing else you need to do. And get start code, of course. I will just show you here. So this is our this is our mentorship web page, and you can see here, and that's basically everything that we built it, and all the actions here are done with JavaScript with jQuery. So if you want to look for Adriana, here I am, and you also do interactions and change here as we want to, advanced filters and so on. So everything here is done with the jQuery. Now, looking at the code-wise, okay, it can get a bit complicated, but let me try to show here. If we're talking only about the search path, so there are many JavaScript here. For example, the mentor page, it has this area here. So we add all the methods, all the logic regarding mentors. And if it's about search page, there is created a controller search, and we initialize in the page. But before getting there, where we have in the include sessions, we have the footer. And as a best practice that you also may be aware is that we always should add a JavaScript in the bottom of the page. So you have all your elements created. And that's how we are doing here. So in that case, we are importing the version 3.2.1 is linked, minimize it, and all the other JavaScripts we are imported after. What we could do, of course, for optimization and performance, we could minimize all these JavaScript in a single one and then import only a single file. But that's kind of considering this is a small page, no issues with, let's say, with performance so far, then that's how we are doing here. So you take basically your page, and then we added here in the bottom. And of course, in the template here, because this is an GitHub page, so we have a bit different. It's not just for HTML. What we are doing is using, for example, here, we are using GitHub Pages, which is this tool where we actually deploy static code, which is just GitHub here. and then we host internally in GitHub. So for free, not paying for that. That's the main reason we start using that, because of course, not much work. You can follow all of that in this repository as well. And in the layouts, it's where things get loaded. So we have the HTML part and we have the body, and in the footer is where we are adding into the end after the body. So by that, we are injecting the JavaScript, all the JavaScript by this HTML file, which is the footer, as I showed before. And each file now coming to the assets, if we take the search one, for example, we are initialized here. Basically, this is kind of a module construction just to make easier to maintain and to avoid effects to other places. That's why we create this controller search and we initialize on the page when the page reload. But this only is affected when we are in the page of when we are in the mentor page. So in that case, for example, going back to the top, in the beginning here, you just initialize some variables to make easier to understand the code and also to improve performance, so you don't have to access the object all the time. So you are caching the variables and using and then you can reuse on the time. So for example, if you take this area, we can see where it's being used, and we can apply filters based on that instead of all the time loading the whole object accessed by jQuery. So this is kind of an optimization. This sounds a little big, but let me try to take this one, which is smaller. So this is a controller for code of conduct. Here we have code of conduct. This page is very simple. The only logic that we have it here is just to learn more when you show the full page of code of conduct and when you show less code of conduct. So in that case, what we are doing here is we create a controller for code of conduct. Then we initialize the mentee code of conduct and mentor code of conduct. And this is here. And when we want to show more and less, that's kind of the function. And when we initialize the page, we say that everything is hidden for the more. And here, so we initialize all the events. What are the events? In that case, is the button on mentee conduct. And this is the mentor conduct. So when we do that, basically is when we show or hide the information. So if the mentor, when I click, let's say here, when I click in the mentee, I would also hide that because I want to see only this code of conduct. Of course, can be improved, but that's just an example because we are interaction with two events here, which is the button of the mentor and the mentee, and the other is just about to initialize the page. Well, in that case, for example, if we went here, let me go into the code of conduct here. We could just inspect that and see what's going on here. And in that case, we have this button primary, and this is the page. So when I click it in the mentee, then we are going to call that. And here we could just, for example, if you want to debug the code, just to see what's going on, that's what I would suggest to understand what's going on. It's here first, then that's exactly what I was showing to you on IDE. So here is the search, but I'm looking for code of conduct. While debugging here, we say, okay, if I click in the Mentee code of conduct, something is going to happen. And what I want to edit here is just add a breakpoint here, and then let's see what's happening. So when I click there, the first thing is just remove the class hidden from the Mentee code of conduct. So now you can see everything. Before it was hidden. Now we remove this class, and now also we are going to hide the content and remove the class, which is this step. If I just take this logic here and add it here, then it's going to show these two buttons, show less and show more. But of course, I don't want both of them be running. Then I will just go to the next one, which says hide the show more, because it's already showing the show more. So that's just a simple thing. Now we only have show less button, and that's it for the page. Now, if I want to show less, what's happening? The show more button happens. So here is just an example. Okay, how can we debug the code? How can we interact? And a little bit of how jQuery is working under the hood, and also how to debug the code using the browser, and how you see like why it's not showing, or if there is any errors. Usually your browser is your best friend here. You can always check what's happening there. For example, if you add something in the page, let's say in the here, console log, and add testing, and or you want to see what is actually class hidden, because maybe you just don't know, then okay, then here. So mentor code of conduct. Now I'm going to the mentor and I'm clicking here. So when you see here, this is the output of this console log. You, of course, you don't need to put an output, because you could just see what is flat hidden directly here. Both ways would work, but debugging and know how to debug, it's kind of it's very important in order to know what's going on and how to make things happen to you. Okay, so this is kind of one of the examples I have it. And here in the mentor, of course, there are way more trickies. That's why in the assets, if you go here in the mentor itself search, there are way more logic, but it's apply message, which I guess is this one, and you can remove. But if you want to just declare all, then you can check for clear. There is a button called clear button, and remove filters. And then when you want to remove the filters, you want to know what's happening here, you could just add a breakpoint and check what is happening. If I do this and that, and I do search, and I want experience of 6 or 7 years, then there is no person. Then when I click here, I want to know what's going on, then basically we know, okay, in order to click in the clear all filter and then apply mentor page, so we can just continue interact and see all the attributes being cleaned up. And that's it. Okay, so what's next? Okay, so this is just kind of a get starting in comparison what we did in the mentorship web page, when you also can access and see how we are doing that. Now I want to talk a little bit about best practice, which is it's kind of important in any framework or any tool that you are using. Try to follow the best practice for that. So if you are coding in JavaScript, try to read about best practices in JavaScript. If you are coding in jQuery, best practices on jQuery, this is kind of a very, very important point to learn better the language and to do the things the right way or the better way, because sometimes there is no right or wrong way, but code convention is where it would be nice for you to follow that. And here, those best practices are really usually part of the best practices that regarding code convention. And here for the jQuery best practice, one of the top one I would say is try to use the latest version, and this can fulfill for any other library. Use the latest, that stable version, then you also always has the last information to you, and fixing bugs and so on. So this is kind of very crucial. The other one, which I think it's kind of important to be aware of, is to minimize the many interactions with the DOM manipulation. Because if you just try and, we have really a good example here of in the Women Who Code London, or let me just take here, we are doing many interactions with the DOM, right? But it's a simple page, it's not complicated. We don't have 1,000 of mentors here that we need to rely and will take longer to apply. So it's just, let's say 60, 50, that's fine. But if we are talking about performance and taking care of performance, it's very important to know that you could, instead of doing one by one element, you can actually, when you are interacting with the DOM, like changing style, CSS, or any HTML attributes, this is interact directly to the DOM. And this means that you can do in a single line. So instead of do one after the other, you can basically do all at once, just to be better performed. It's not better for reading, for sure, and neither for maintainability, but of course, then it's the pros and cons that you have to think about. But this is one thing to keep in mind. And the other one is the one that I was just talking to you about, the caching the object. So instead of access the object all the time that you need it, you can reuse the object. So in that case here, instead of I'm getting my element all the time, I'm just attributing this element into the variable. Here I'm using, it's a suggested var, but you can use let from JavaScript. Don't need to be global. And then you can just change, and you don't need to take all the time the objects. It will be cached and it's simpler, perform better. So that's why we are doing that in here. So you avoid that. The only problem is when you are creating elements under the fly, which means you don't have access to all these elements in the beginning before you initialize the page. And that's also another reason why you first have to wait for the page to initialize and then to apply the events. Because otherwise, if the page is not full loaded, you don't have those elements into the page, then it's not going to work. So that's kind of you, if you are, for example, loading these on the fly, if we have like a pagination here, and which we should, because it's already too big, then we should actually just load what you have visible, not load during initialization if you don't have it. So that's one of the reasons why we are doing that. And also, it's reuses variable. It's better to avoid code duplication. I think that's following best practice of code. Code duplication is not nice. So if you can get rid of it, try that. Here also is the another reason why we are using a scope variable. So don't use global. Don't do like we could basically just in this page in the index we could basically add it here the script and just basically copy this logic here directly and put there. It would work because it's jQuery. jQuery is available globally, but we shouldn't do that because this is kind of it's really hard to maintain. It's also can affect it to other page if you are loading one page to other page. So in that case, what you could do, considering this is the index page for the mentor, actually we could load only split of the JavaScript only in that page instead of load in all the pages. But in order to avoid that, that's why we are doing this scope. So we are passing the jQuery object into the scope of this controller, and then we initialize it here. So everything that's happening here does not affect outside. So it's not global, and you can be sure just anything that is the only thing that's exposed here is this init variable. And of course, that's another point that we should do let instead of var. That's our improvements. That's something that we should, for example, if you want to contribute, here are some places you can start contribute because var is a global scope and we should not use that. In that case here, you can use var just for that controller because the only one globally that you want to expose is the controller, not what is inside of this. And here looking in the search, this is one of the JavaScript that we get the latest changes and upgrades. You can see everything else here, or more or less everything else has a let instead of var, because these should be accessed only in the scope of this method. JavaScript is very about scope. So keep in mind everything you do should not affect other scope. If you use var, it's global scope. If you use let, it's only on the scope of this block. So this is kind of a very important to avoid. So use functions and keep in the scope. And here the other reason also is make modular. And that's if you want to change, it's really easy to maintain. So instead of put in the page as I suggested here, we could do everything here. But we in that way, what we did, we put it in the JavaScript file. We create each controller for each page, and each controller also has their function like show mentor card, hide mentor card, apply filters, and so on. So it's modular. When you want to, let's say that you want, for example, expose more things, the only thing that's exposed from outside is this function here. If you want to allow other controller to talk to each other, you could also expose search to other one, and then they could use, for example, in the other custom page. So it's modular, it can grow, but it's easier to maintain. Like mentor is already feels like a lot. We could at this point now seeing that we have around 100 lines, it's kind of an indication that we could split it and make modular and split again just to make easier to maintain. This, I guess this is also valid for any JavaScript or for any other technology that you are going to use. Try to make simpler, try to make modular that you can make easier for you to test it and to maintain. Because if you are new to the code and you have to go through 1,000 lines, it's very hard to understand what's going on. So that's the reason of the try to make modular whenever possible. So for plugins, there are many plugins, of course. You can find all options here. But I want to just show you the ones that we have it in our page, which is, it's kind of even not a plugin per se, but just kind of a gallery that you can just play around here. And there is also another one, which is in the FAQ. Also, you could just using plugins for this kind of thing. So one example that I have here, it was, what is it? Let me try to find it. Yeah, anyway, I can take another one. I put in the presentation, sorry. So, for example, this plugin is about filtering and selection. So you just play around and you make it the options here. So it's hosted. It has like 10,000 of stars, and it has a good documentation. So it's about like I want to have this grid filtered out and then just show all or do other things. It's kind of a, you can imagine you can look for a gallery, for pagination, for menu. There are many plugins. For us, we are using most of the interactions. We are using Bootstrap, of course, but so it's Bootstrap, jQuery, examples. So, for example, here they have like some examples how to do it, and that's what we are using for our page a lot. It's a combination of jQuery with Bootstrap, and there is many like popover, or like if you go to model, also there are other types. So this was what we decided at the time because it was easier, but there are many others. If you think I want to build a gallery or build a pagination, then just try to look around for options and then you try to, but don't try to use all of them. Make simple just to see what is best for you, for your case, and try to not add too many libraries. Just that's why right now we are stick to jQuery plus Bootstrap, but of course there are many other options that we could improve, because if you think about just about these not the fact, but this gallery here is kind of ugly. We could make a really better for sure. We do have an issue created to make this better. It's also, if any one of you are up to the challenge, feel free to try some plugin and then to make this better for sure. We are also really nice for that. Okay, so coming to the plugins, as you can see, the list here is infinite, has a lot of options. Just play around, see what makes easier, what is easier to understand, which has better documentation. Keep that in mind when you are doing. Okay, so when we are talking about jQuery, that it's nice, it's simple, but we don't have to use always, and when we should not use that. So I think most of the people now are asking us in the community why we are actually using jQuery, why we are not using React, or why we are not using Vue or other frameworks. And the reason for that, it was pretty dumb. In my case, it was just because I thought that jQuery was simpler for anyone to start and to work on that without any further experience. That was simple. That the page is supposed to be simple. That was the reason. But if you have, for example, as I mentioned, performance is a kind of a problem. If we are talking about 1,000 or 2,000 of objects in the list and you want to load, reload, and do many animation, maybe jQuery is not for you. So it's not going to work in all the case. The other example that we have here is a single page application, which is the perfect case to use React. So you don't reload, you can have many components, many objects. And if your page is kind of has this indication, just go for the standards that we are using now, like using React or using Angular or any other framework that you feel comfortable using or which the company is comfortable using. And in that case, for example, for the women who code, as you can see here, using GitHub page, it was really not a single page application because we are hosting in this page, and that's why kind of for us, it was just simpler to do that, but I'm pretty sure that's possible to use other framework together in the GitHub. So it's also something that we are considering for later. And anyone can fork the project if you up to a challenge, can create in other library and propose. That will be also fun, just for learn or for understanding how other framework works in comparison, of course. So the learning and skills development, it's for me, I feel very easier, simple to understand. Here says like if you the point and that is like you shouldn't, if you have no experience with JavaScript so far, I wouldn't recommend you go directly to jQuery. And that's the same as, let's say, recommendation or guidance that I would say if you have no skill with JavaScript, don't go direct to React, or don't learn the framework without learning the language, because then you don't know the principles, the basics behind of that. So this is kind of, don't use jQuery if you don't know JavaScript. Just first get some understanding of the JavaScript. What is JavaScript? What can you do? And then go to frameworks, libraries, and so on. And this also, I would say, apply to any other language. If you are talking about backend Java, for example, don't try to learn Spring if you don't know Java. So because it makes your life way complicated, and you will be attached to the framework, not to the core, which is the language. That's my thought on that. Also, other recommendation to not use if you are talking about a mobile application. So this works on mobile, but this is kind of a browser application and not a mobile application. So if you are thinking about create a mobile app, no, don't use jQuery, go to the other frameworks. And the size constraints here is more about if you are thinking about upload big size of a data, or let's say the JavaScript's too big and you have many pages and so on, just keep in mind that it's better to minimize the JavaScript, and this is also apply for all the other things. So if it's too big, then maybe also not a big website, don't go for that, because there are better things to use it there. Okay, so as a conclusion for me, I think there are really many frameworks there about JavaScript, and also about new frameworks on what to do and so on. But I think jQuery is still a valuable tool. Many developers are still using, and it's quick to get to understand, and it's also quick to make a simple prototype or a simple project. So if you are looking for something simple or just to try out and show quickly, that's why jQuery is there. Okay, so I think that's me. I don't know if you have questions or so on. I think there are some. Okay, yeah. If you want to ask anything, or I can stop now and we can just chat.
I have a question. You mentioned making contributions to the open source code. So I was wondering, like, before we make any contributions, do we have to make create an issue before we can do that? That's what I was.
That's not define it. So for us, it's nice to have an issue just because a contribution can be anything. So a contribution could say, hey, I noticed that you are not using the standards for jQuery, you're using var. This has to be fixed. This is already a contribution. Just by creating the issue, you are contributed. So, but you don't need the issue in order to contribute, because as you can see here, we have many QA issues that was suggestions from the automation that we have it. So there is no need to have an issue, but anyone can create an issue. You can create, you can already create as a bug or as a feature and do it. But as if you go in the pull request as well, you can see there are many closed that are not related to issue at all. It's just some suggestions, someone thinks about something and then did it. What I do recommend to create an issue, if it's you are proposing to rework or remove jQuery to use Vue, for example, because this is a big change, right? So if you are proposing that, then I would first create an issue to have a conversation, a chat with the community and see how they would support the idea, so you don't kind of waste your time if we are not going to approve that. That would be my recommendation. But it's not mandatory. If you see a bug, a simple problem in the page, which is, let's say there is an error in the console when I'm doing something, then you can just go there and create. For example, one thing that annoys me a little bit is when you are, let's see, I think here. So we have this, it's very stupid. I don't know if you noticed, but I prefer the page being always the same size, but when you click it here, it's increased. What would be better is to have all this page, this show more option, then only when you want to see, you have that. And okay, there is no issue for that. I think I created, I'm not sure. But if you just note something that you could do an improvement, just do it. We will be happy to have any support and collaboration. And again, you can see here we have the team. Let me just put here. So we have the team core, which now we also have the contributors. Everyone that is supporting, and actually we have to update this because we have more team members now. The contributor, right now we are having the top 10 contributors are showing. We are going to show them here. And of course, when you go to the pull request or here, you also can see all contributors. They also will be here. What we are doing is kind of looking, for example, is an issue or there is an idea that we have it that maybe GitHub has an API to provide the top 10 contributions, and then we can automatically update the page. That is something we can do with jQuery, which will be very nice if we have the API, and then we don't need to maintain static because right now we are working as a static. So feel free to create an issue. If you just have an idea, feel free to just fork the project, create the chains, and create the pull request here. For example, this one is one that's created by Leonora, one of our teammates, and she did she did create a review tab, as you can see here. And I was commenting out about what can we do and so on. And then I fork her fork to give other suggestions. And then I share with her, for example, let me here. So I did a little difference and suggest to her. So because I didn't want to push, I just kind of, we are collaborating, working together. She had the idea, I had some other idea. That's how kind of collaboration works. And this is the energy of the team, I would say. this is open source. I think it's not big, it's not huge. I think anyone is welcome to collaborate and to support, even if it's HTML, CSS, or create an issue. This is already kind of collaboration. So we need all types of collaborations. If you want to become a mentor, or this is also collaboration. So it's all of that. Okay. So any more questions? Or then I will, let me stop sharing, and I will, or not, stop recording.